Okay, so just continuing with the car park, all I've done here is draw in some basic walls, so they're just generic walls that I've drawn with a size that I know will fit some fire stairs, just so I can demonstrate the stair tool to you really. And your fire stair may change quite a lot, but of course you're free to just replicate this layout as you're all some of you discovering. The levels here are a little bit different to what I've shown you, but you can modify your ramps accordingly and it should still work. But the other elements like the stairs and the location of the car park spaces and other things you can probably keep in a fairly similar layout. Oh yeah, and the ramp width, if you notice that as well, that's a good pickup. So this ramp is far too narrow and yours will need to be 5.5, so you may end up taking 2 grids spacings up. But again, the fire stair is an important thing, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on the stair tool. And there's some good pointers here. So firstly, before I start drawing my stair, I just want to make it clear that there are 2 stair tools in Revit and they're completely unrelated. They're not compatible with each other. You can't switch from one to the other or anything like that. You choose one and you're stuck with it. So I use Stair by Sketch, and that's the one I'm going to focus on. So in the early stages I'll try to use that as much as I can because it's got some real advantages. But then Stair by Component is the newer tool, and when I get towards the documentation stage I'll actually remake all of my stairs using the Stair by Component tool because it has some good features for documentation. That's what I like about it. But it's got a lot of other things that make it more work than it needs to be. So again, Stair by Sketch, if you're not sure, that's the one you probably want to try to use, especially at first, to learn how it all works. And the last thing I'll say about that is that the Stair by Component tool has a lot of options that you'll see when you go into it, a lot like the options you get with Stair by Sketch, and that's what I've just gone through there. So, so by learning the Stair by Sketch tool, you're actually learning a lot of the things that you'll use with Stair by Component. So this, or before I make the stair, I'm going to do a basic setup, and this would apply to either of those different stair types. I'm going to start with a reference plane and set out the width of my stair. So I'm not going to exactly copy this, but I'm going to do something fairly similar. So look at that shape there. It's basically a U shape, and we've got 1, 2, 3. So that's 450. Let's say 500. I'll do 450. Yeah, 450 from this corner to this corner, and that's all I need to know. So, okay. So how wide does fire stair need to be? It's in, so that's one of the things in section D. You read through that. It tells you the width, and so it should be 1 metre clear between your handrails. That's the minimum width for required access. So that's a good figure to remember. Then, depending on the number of people that are occupancy, it could be higher. But 1 metre is the minimum. So I've drawn a reference plane, which is marking the width of my stair, and then I'm going to draw one alongside this wall on the left, and again make that 1,000. Like I was saying, I know now that the length of this next flight is going to be 450. It's 3 steps. Oh no, sorry, it's not 750. I was thinking of 150 rises, but yeah, 750 because we've got 3 250 treads. And then I'm going to draw, so I'll extend that reference plane across and draw another one now, 1 metre. So in a way, hopefully you can see I'm kind of setting out the layout of the stairs in plan with these reference planes which I'm using like construction lines. Then looking at this, I could set out the starting point. Yeah, maybe I will. but I'll show you a way of doing it where you don't need to do this. So here I'm going to put a reference plane that's 750 from this edge. So again, 3 steps. And that's where my first step should be, the edge of my first step. So those are things that are helpful. Having the outsides of your stair set up with the reference planes definitely will help you. But this is the real tip. Once you've got that, then draw a reference plane for the centre line. So this will be 500 for either side. And then here, so that's my first flight. This is a landing. Then there'll be another flight here. So I'm going to draw a centre line there, and again make that 500. And then now a final centre line for my last flight. And again, 500. Any idea why the centre line's going to be so useful? If you use the stair tool? That's right, exactly. When you're drawing the stair, that's what it means. So now I can go to stair by sketch. And before I start drawing my stair, I'm going to go into properties, and this is a good process you should always follow. You've got the levels there at the top. So it's going from car park 2 to car park 1, and that's what I want. And you need to know the levels you're going from, and that's from the level you've started drawing on, and the level it's going to, which is just going to be the next level above. And so sometimes you need to change that. You've got a mezzanine or something. And then scrolling down, you can see there we've got the width, 1000, that's what I want as well. And then the most important thing, the desired number of risers. So that's how it works out the riser height. And so because we've got the height difference between these two levels, that can then be divided by the number of risers to arrive at the riser height, which is 181.8 in this case. If you want a lower riser height, then you can increase the number of risers. So if I increase that to, let's say, 24, and now you can see the riser height's gone down to 166 because the height difference, does anyone remember what it is? I don't remember, I'll go and look. I haven't mentioned it, but let's see. 4 metres. That's right, I should have remembered that. Okay, so it's 4 metres between the levels. And then on which level am I on? Car park 2. Okay, so 4,000 divided by 22 was the first one. That's this 181. 4,000 divided by 24, 166. And so before Revit, that is exactly what you would do. You would sit down with the floor-to-floor height and just divide that by the number of risers. Well, in fact, you divide that by 190, which is the maximum riser height, and then that would give you the riser count. Then you divide that by the floor-to-floor, and this number would come up. Then you would sit down and draw them with that measurement. And even with AutoCAD, that's how you do it. But again, Revit's working that out for you. You just need to be aware of that process and understand that it gets the riser height from the number of risers you've specified. I'm happy with the 5 stair to go back to 22, which is the minimum number of risers. But if you had another kind of stair, you might want lower risers. They're generally nicer than going to the maximum height. And so this is how you adjust it. And then you should also have a look at the tread depth. So 250 is the minimum for public stair. And so now, if I try to draw, it won't do anything because it had the run tool before, but now I need to select it again to start drawing. And have you had a look at the difference between the run tool and then boundaries and risers? Stairs? No, we'll do that another time, but we'll look at that. So, just so you know, the run tool automates the creation of boundaries and risers. So, essentially, you can use the run tool, or you can use both of these together. So boundaries and risers need to both be drawn for it to work. But again, the run tool will give you both of those things. So with the run tool, now I know where my stair begins. I've marked it out with a reference plane, so I should be able to click on that intersection, come over to the left, and it should snap exactly to the reference plane on the left. And then here, you can see it's not quite getting the right point, so you need to be careful here and snap it exactly onto the thing you want it to, and zooming in there is often something you'll need to do. And again, this should snap onto the exact point. And then again here you can see, looks close, but I know because it's not highlighting the reference plane that it's not right. It's easy for it to snap to the wrong thing, and if it's not quite right, it'll mess up your stair because it won't join the springers and other things properly. So again, I'm just making sure I get the right point and zooming in if I have to. Now if I click on that intersection, I can then take it all the way to the right and see if that's, well, this is actually a bit more than we need. So you could always take it to a point here and then maybe come back down this way. Might work. Have to plan that out. So let's have a look at the drawing and see why. Oh yeah, so maybe wood. Let's have a look at the next drawing. I'll check the sections. So they've only shown 14 here. We'll know later. I think that's definitely too few. But we've increased the ceiling height, so we did say, because we talked about this building earlier in the year and decided that it'd be good if you tried having higher ceilings. So you probably will end up with more steps and longer ramps than in the example that you've got there. So that process though is generally going to work pretty well. But like I said, I was going to show you how you can do it without that that first step worked out. So still just with the centre lines, I can go and draw with the run tool and start anywhere. So it's a really good trick, a bit like the ramp. I can just start it over an empty space here. Taking it to the left, I'm just going to start one step at a time. So see how as I move the cursor, it's snapping one tread, and it's telling me, if you can read it, oh yeah, it's easier on the decorator one. 2 risers created, 20 remaining. And so as I move, it's going to adjust that count accordingly. You just need to be careful here and watch out for things like this where it's snapping to the wrong thing. Right, so we've got treads that are 250, and so the increment there should be 1,000, not 998.3. So you need to be careful of that and just make sure you do get the full treads. So 3 steps wasn't enough there. So I'm going to try to get, well, I've got plenty of room, so I'm going to try to get maybe 7. That should fit. So I've got 7 treads. Now I can just press escape or cancel twice, and then select those lines. They are just lines, and that's why I like the stair by sketch tool so much, because you're only working with 2D lines instead of the 3D objects that you have with stair by component. And it still creates a 3D stair either way. So it's much easier making it with lines, I think. So again, I've drawn these lines, selected them, and now if I click the move button, I can snap it from the corner here onto the corner on my reference planes. But do you know why it's not moving diagonally? Exactly, yeah. That's a really good option. If you don't know that one, turn it off. You probably never turn it on again. It's really annoying, I think, having constraints on. You might need it sometimes, but usually I just turn that off first chance I get. So, and yeah, it's good if you know that one. So now if I click on the intersection with my reference planes, it can snap diagonally. Then back to the run tool, and I can draw the next one just like I did before. Right, now I can't just draw these other flights anywhere, because if I do, so I'll show you what will happen if I start maybe at a point up here, thinking I can move this flight to the landing afterwards. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. So if I do this flight, see how it's put the landing in for me? Now, if you look at the things it's creating, it's giving these black lines, they're risers. So the riser tool lets you draw the black lines, draw those steps, essentially, the edge of your tread. The green lines are the boundaries. So the boundary tool makes those. And so you can draw a stair with those two tools without using the run tool at all. The only difference is you wouldn't get that blue line, but it would still work as a stair. Probably not so useful for fire stairs, but for other stairs it's really useful. But the problem here is that it's making these things automatically, and it's made the landing. So if you didn't realise, I was only clicking the points at the beginning of and end of each flight, and it puts the landing in automatically. But if I go back to change this now, I'll delete those boundaries because I want to move this onto the corner. Delete those. It's coping. And I'll try picking this up, and then if I click move, snap it from there onto here. That's not right. You can see it might look like it's close, but it's not highlighting the endpoint. So you can either zoom or use tab to make sure it's getting the right point. And again, you've got to get the stair joining properly. That's not right, so I'll do it again. Yeah, tab definitely is the way to go there. So on that corner point, there we go, that's the endpoint. And that's worked pretty well. So here, it's kept that boundary joined. So that would work, but it would be better if you just drew it in place. And then even at that point, I can adjust those flights fairly easily. With the blue line, you can use the grip, just stretch that, and it should snap to a step, an even tread. So I can add 2 here, which means I can take 2 off up here, and still have 22. And so that you don't have to count them, you can of course look in properties and see these 2 values. You've got the desired number, which is the number you can adjust, and then the actual number. It's greyed out here, but you can adjust that because it's just the number you've drawn. So that's 22, and that's got no more than 18 in a flight, so that's acceptable. You don't know, you can only have 18 steps in a single flight. The only problem is that it's maybe too close to the wall over here, so I'll measure that. Yes, it is. Okay, so I'd need to change that further. So it's 800.
Because it's only live, then you can't look at that in section or...
No, that's right. But I can always finish it, and then look at it in section, and then go back to edit it after.
Okay, so it does actually...
Oh yeah. Oh, of course, yeah. And so, my section's pointing the other way. Maybe I'll just do a new section. Don't be afraid to make a ton of sections, because once your building gets complicated, you'll need lots to be able to see all the different parts inside. And it's no problem deleting a section if you've made too many. So yeah, so it is good just to then see the riser heights and make sure it does connect to the floor above, and that's obviously doing that. And then going back, okay, so now I can easily select it, go to edit sketch, and then keep working with the sketch further. So say I want to add some steps to this middle part. There are a few tricks I can show you there. The best way would be to delete the last flight completely and come back and make that. Right, so now it automatically gets rid of that landing. Now I can use the run and extend it without too much trouble. And luckily, because I'm in 500 increments, when I use the run tool, I can now snap to this one. That's better. And so here, I've got, how many in total? Yeah, 22 and 22. So I'm going to add one to the end, take one off the beginning. And so now, from here to the wall, should be over 1 metre. There we go. All good. So if I finish that, again, just quickly show you in section, it is a housed stair. In other words, it's got a stringer on either side. You have, with your template, the monolithic stair in properties, which is basically a concrete stair. But I deliberately didn't change to that straight away because they work a little bit differently to the stairs with stringers. And I'll do a section the other way just to show you that. So yeah. So, okay, so the way monolithic stairs work is that the issue is to do with the last step anyway. I'll talk to you more about this next week, but essentially if I measure from this last step up to the top, there we go, so I'm missing a step. I do need to go and add one. If you look in properties, you'll see, yeah, there we are. So I've got desired numbers 23. Now the actual number is 21. So they count differently and they are built differently. So really the only solution there is for me to go back to edit sketch and add in at least one more, not two. You might be thinking two because it's got 21 and it said it needs 23. But I'm just going to add one. And yeah, another thing probably good for you to see, when I go to stretch this now, and it's not doing what it did before. So if that happens, sometimes it's easier just to delete it and make it again. There is a way you can get that to work, but it's not worth worrying about. And here, well, another little issue, it is the right point. It doesn't look like it because the two reference planes aren't highlighted, but I know I've done this many times and that is still going to work. Okay, so here, what I'm going to do is go one step less. So it's trying to go, well, if I go to the end there, that would be 23. So if I bring it back one, that'll be 22. And again, it's all to do with that last step. I'll spend more time on this next week. But you'll see it, you'll understand it probably when you see this. So my last step is one riser below my floor. Yeah, that's right. The floor is effectively your last step. So that's pretty straightforward. So then why are there so many issues with monolithic stairs, and why have they got this funny thing with the count? And it's all to do with the way you build concrete stairs. It's technically correct, actually, the way they're doing it. It's the way engineers need it to be for their calculations, but it's a little bit confusing at first. So I'll spend more time on that next week. And so if you're going to try and play with the stair tool during the week, just leave it with the original one to start with. Play around with monolithic if you like, but if you do leave it with that 190 max riser that it starts with, then you shouldn't have any issues, and I'll go over the other ones afterwards. But that'd be good if you can try and do some stairs.